Hello and good morning. This is Carra Riley from the Transition Living Real Estate team, and I'm here with the cosmic characters from the Cosmic Cow Pie. And I've been selling real estate for over 40 years, so I have some tips and tricks and magic in my bag of tricks. And I'm here with Peggy Dormaier, and she is with the Loan Zone Mortgage, and she's been in mortgage banking for over 35 years. So we have put together a little event for you to show how to get your contract accepted in a seller's market, which we're experiencing in Colorado right now. And no matter what the time frame is, if you're in a seller's market, you need to know how to navigate the cow pies that are there. So I'm going to let Peggy tell you a little bit more about herself.
Hello to you all. It's so very nice to be with you. I started my first job as a lender, as a loan officer when I got out of college. My degree's in real estate finance, and I've been a mortgage lender my entire adult life. I've lent in almost a dozen different states in the United States, and it's a fun job, and I love it.
Oh, that's great, Peggy. So here we are. We're ready to get going on 10 tips to get a contract accepted. And we start out with getting pre-qualified. So Peggy, tell us about the difference between pre-approval and pre-qualification.
There's quite a bit of difference between pre-approval, pre-qualified, approved, and fully underwritten. Most people, I should say a lot of people, are out driving around on a Sunday afternoon and they stop into an open house and decide they want to buy, but they have not talked to a lender and they have zero chance of getting a house in that situation. Pre-approved means you've talked to a lender, and that's all it is you've talked. You've told them what you make. You've told them you have good or bad credit, how much money you have down. That pre-approval is just as good as the lender because nothing's been reviewed. Pre-qualified means that you've given your bank statements, your W-2s, your pay stubs. We've pulled credit. We know that you meet the guidelines, and we would say you're pre-qualified. A more powerful tool is pre-approved through the automated underwriting system. That means that not only have we looked at all the documents, but the system itself says, yes, the ratios work, the down payment works. And that's what you want. You want a pre-qualified loan when you're looking so that the lender can make a good lender letter to the seller.
I really want to emphasize the fact that the pre-approval as a listing agent is way more important and carries much more weight with a seller because they know that your down payment is there, your FICO scores are there, and that you are ready to go as a buyer. Now, another thing that Peggy does that will help get your contract through when you're working with a buyer's agent, and that is she will call the listing agent to verify the letter is in fact correct. And sometimes there is fraud, so you have to know this, that the lender being on your team, working with your buyer's agent, calling the listing agent is all part of the process to put the transaction together. And then the next step we've got to take care of is learning about what will make the seller happy. Okay, what are the seller's needs? When do they need to move? Do they have a contingency? This communication with the listing agent, and I know Peggy has some stories about this, some of the contracts where no one even calls anyone. They just throw up a contract, hope it sticks on the wall. And sometimes the listing agents are very busy. Okay, they get a new listing that's a hot listing. They're going to have phone call after phone call after phone call. And you want a buyer's agent who is not going to stop with just a text message or an email or a voicemail. They're going to continue until they can figure out when the seller wants to close. Do they need to rent back? Because sometimes a seller hasn't found a new home. So maybe you need to give the seller 30 days to find a new home, and then give them 60 days when they close, because they can't write a contingent contract. As they're moving, nobody wants to take contingent upon selling your house. So this is an important factor in everything that you're doing, is coordinating the seller's needs and then following up and meeting those needs. You win if the seller wins. It is totally a win-win situation. So now we go into the contract, and we're going to talk about the earnest money. What do you think, Miss Peggy?
The earnest money is so critical to the transaction. It's basically just a deposit on the purchase. You're saying to the seller, I am making this offer in good faith and I expect to close. If I back out, you can keep the money. We never let you back out, and we never let the seller keep the money, but that's what the implication is. You want to have the highest possible earnest money in this market. It's common to offer 1%. The contract itself, or the listing, the MLS that's on the market, tells you what the seller wants for the earnest money, but you need to make it as high as you can. The sources for the earnest money: cash, checking, mutual funds, your retirement account.
Gift letters.
What gift letters? You can sell a motorcycle. This is a good time of year because you're getting a tax refund, hopefully, and stimulus checks. So there's all sorts of ways to have the highest possible earnest money that you can provide.
The earnest money a lot of times speaks to the seller in a serious tone. If you're a conventional buyer and you're putting 20% down, you might as well put all the down payment, $400,000 house, and you're putting 80,000 down. Put that up there in the earnest money. One of our next slides is going to be talking about the 9 ways you can get out of the contract and get your money back. But the seller will know you are a serious buyer the more money that you put down. And you're going to have your down payment and closing costs at the end of 30 or 45 days anyway. So you might as well put it all up front so that the seller knows that you are a serious buyer. So then, here are the 9 ways that we can get out of the contract. And depending on what state you live, this is Colorado examples. All of these are dates, due diligence dates, where you have to do something. You have to approve the HOA docs. You have to have an inspection. You have to have a loan approved. And that is one of the key factors right there, where you have to be working with your loan officer, because there is a loan approval deadline. Sometimes people get right up to the end, and I'm going to let Peggy talk about this because this is key to getting your contract accepted. When's the last date that you can get out of the contract and get all your money back? So Peggy, let's talk about the date, the loan approval final date.
I believe, and Carra believes, that the loan approval deadline should be at least 1 week before closing. That gives everybody a little bit of ease of mind, knowing that this is going to happen in a week. But it doesn't always happen that way. I had one closing this week that the approval deadline day was the closing date. So if you were a seller and you woke up on the day of closing and your buyer decided to back out because there was terms he couldn't meet, you have to start all over with somebody else. So that date is critically important.
It's like the most important date of the entire contract, actually, for the seller, because as a listing agent, we are counseling a seller as to here's all the times a buyer can get out of the deal. And you have to be prepared for that because it actually happens. And so if it's the day or 2 or 3 days before closing, that's a nightmare. If you've got your truck set up and where you're going, it really is. So it's an important date, and it can help you win in the contract competition if you have that a week out, so at least everybody's comfortable. Now we get to home inspection. Now, this is the ultimate, gee, I had buyer's remorse and I don't want to buy the house, because any subjective concern that a buyer has, they can just say, I'm out. I had my inspection and I'm out. One of the things that you can do in the contract, though, is identify the fact that you're not going to be nitpicking the house. It's only health and safety. If there's a gas leak at the hot water tank, they're going to have to fix it whether you buy it or whether another buyer buys it. And for themselves, they wouldn't want to live with a gas leak in the basement. So if you can keep it towards health and safety, your buyer's agent will have some contracts that are, yes, that they would like clauses that will protect you as a buyer. And then you can work together on what it is that you want the seller to fix. A lot of times, if a smoke alarm is over 10 years old, all inspectors say, replace all the smoke alarms. Well, let's do the math on that. A $10 smoke alarm and you need 4 of them, that's $40. You are not gonna risk losing a contract for $40. So this is the way you have to think about the contract. And then when the agent, your buyer's agent, is making a cover letter with all of the pluses of your contract, they don't have to go through it. The buyer's agent makes this sheet saying, here's all the good points to my contract. And that saves the listing agent hours of pouring through maybe 27 contracts. So the home inspection is definitely something you got to look at. Now, we're going to talk about an escalation clause and a gap, appraisal gap with the loan.
Well, in this market, there's bidding wars. There's a inventory shortage, as we all know. And so you can build in an escalation clause into the contract. And what this says is, I'm going to offer $345,000, Mr. Seller. But if anybody offers more than me, I will escalate what their offer is by $3,000 for a maximum up to X number. And it just builds in an escalation on the sales price if somebody's outbidding you. Another way to handle the same situation is to offer an appraisal gap. As a lender, we loan on the lesser of the sales price or appraised value. If you sell it for $375 and the appraisal comes in at $372, there's a $3,000 gap there. And you have to cover that gap because as a lender, we're basing it on the lower. So you'd have to bring an extra $3,000 to closing. And that extra money that you have, it's the same sources as the down payment. You can use gift, you can use checking, savings, retirement, selling an asset, whatever you can do, you can have money available for the appraisal gap.
And this really has to be starting out with your team, your broker's agent, your buyer's agent, and your lender, and a current market analysis on the property before you even write the contract. You need to know what the homes have been selling for that are similar in the area, and then talk with the lender about how it is we're going to put this together. If we're offering 25 or 30,000 over maybe what the last sold comp was. And so if you can't do it, you shouldn't play in that game. So it's all upfront. It's all the planning and all the upfront work that helps you win. And so you do, like on this video, we've spent hours trying to get it together so we could give you 15 minutes of how to do it, but it was hours of planning. And it's the same thing with writing a contract and getting the right information so that you can win. Now, there's another clause in the contract that can help you win, which is the lead-based paint risk assessment. Every contract, and this is a federal regulation, has a 10-day period in the contract that allows a buyer to do a lead-based paint assessment on any home built before 1978. Now you'll get a little booklet. It's called Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. But you can go down, see where the turquoise arrow is, where it says waive the opportunity to conduct a risk assessment for the presence of lead-based paint. any contract that's written on a home before 1978, the seller knows. It's like, this buyer has 10 days to get out of the contract based on a lead-based paint assessment. If you have checked this box, waive the assessment, then the seller doesn't have to worry about it. And if the home has been painted over 4 or 5 times, you've covered up all the old lead-based paint. And the other thing is, the cost of mitigating lead-based paint would be overwhelming. So that's something that you can also do. And during your inspection, you can talk about it, because you'll always have that ultimate out in the inspection. So now we go to that cash is king. And how does that work, Peggy, with doing a loan? How can we help a buyer in this case?
Well, the cash is king, and the perception from a seller is, if you have cash buyer, you don't have the appraisal, you don't have all the lender issues, the loan commitment deadline. Sellers like to accept cash. From my point of view, a lot of times when you have cash, you have people juggling money from lots of sources. I have one right now that the down payment's coming from 4 different sources, and it's very complicated. But the sellers like cash, and they will accept cash first. After cash, they will prefer a conventional offer, preferably a conventional offer with 10% or 20% down. They will probably take a conventional offer with less down, and then their third choice would be an FHA transaction. So you want to put yourself in the strongest possible position. Cash is best. If you can refinance a current house and pull cash out and pay cash for another property, that works, or at least pull 20% out, would make you more competitive. But if you're an FHA buyer, FHA loans are designed for, they're not as strict as conventional. So it's easier to get an FHA loan because the lender is ensured that if you don't make your payment, we'll get reimbursed. So we're a little more lenient on the guidelines. If you're an FHA buyer, that it implies to the seller that it might be a more difficult transaction. The appraisal requirements are more strict. The inspection issues are more health and safety related. Think banisters, ripped carpet, broken windows. FHA is very strict about all of those. So the seller's perception is it might be harder to get to the closing table. So they're more inclined to take cash first, conventional second, FHA third.
So that's just a little caveat. And if you're a buyer getting down payment assistance, that's a challenge.
It's even more,
especially when you're competing.
Yes, you do not have to disclose your down payment to the seller, because the down payment is no different than a gift or anything else. And we don't say, okay, Mr. Seller, this is subject to receiving the gift. We don't say that in the lender letter per se. So you don't have to disclose the down payment assistance.
And so if you're getting that, if you're getting a CHAFA loan or you're getting something, try and go for a conventional, right? Qualifying for a conventional down payment assistance versus an FHA kind of.
And the implication is higher credit scores and less lower ratios. Those are the two things that will strengthen you from an FHA to conventional.
Great. So now we're going to say, here's one of the best tips that you're going to get from listening today. This is the 9th tip, is offer the seller a bonus. Beat the crowd in a bidding war, okay? Because if you're after a property that is going to have 15, 20 offers on it, give the seller a signing bonus. The sports guys do it. Why can't we? So we do this for taking an offer before a deadline. A lot of properties go on the market on a Friday, and they'll have showings through Sunday, and they'll get back to you on Monday or Tuesday. Well, if you want to avoid that weekend traffic rush, get there, show it first, and have the acceptance be 6 p.m. on that Friday date. And if you were going to offer 25,000 over, make the signing bonus 10,000 and 15,000 over the sales price. It adds up to the same 25,000 if that was your bottom line, but you get it taken off the market so there aren't any competing offers. If they sign it that day by 6 p.m., then your offer goes up $10,000. And I'll tell you what, that does talk to the seller, that's for sure. Now,
the sellers don't like having people traipsing through their house all weekend and having to leave, and it's not pleasant for them either. So that's a great tip.
It is. And then, now let's say you didn't win. Okay, being in backup position can be one of the most beneficial places to be in a transaction, because when you're competing with numbers of offers, sometimes people are making emotional decisions, and then they again get that buyer's remorse. So you can see over on the right here, being in second, try and get in backup. Get your buyer's agent to write you a clause, putting you in backup position with no earnest money till you're in first position, and then that you can terminate at any time prior to being in first position. So you can still go shopping, and you've got this tied up, and then you just get out of this if you find one that you win a contract on. But what I want you to see here is the third entry down. This was last week's new listings on the market, 801 in the Denver metro area, 312 that will be coming in a week, and then 163 that have gone back on the market. So if you were in the second position on something that someone didn't want, then you get to win. So, and I know, Peggy, you've had some of those great.
I had a closing this month in March of someone that was in backup position, and the people have a tendency to snap up the property and say the words out loud. Oh, we can get out on inspection if we need to. Let's just snap it up. And a lot of people do back out. And my first time home buyers, young little family with a newborn, were able to close last week in backup.
Oh, that's great. Well, we've covered our 10 tips, and we have a PDF for you. You can look in the About section of this video, and you'll have contact information for both Peggy and myself, and you'll have a link to be able to get a PDF with the 10 tips of how to make your winning contract. And so we're so happy that we could help you. Hopefully you talk to your buyer's agent, talk with your lenders. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us, but you go out there and enjoy this great spring weather that should be coming up.